So, listen, welcome everyone. Uh, we we've just come off a little informal pre-meet chat, and now we're ready to go. My name's Steve Bowbrick, and I'm the editor of a newsletter called Gross. It's on Substack, and I'm really would be very keen if you'd subscribe to that once you've watched this live, of course. We're with I'm together today with Professor Catherine Liu. And I think to some extent an introduction would be kind of redundant here because I know that a lot of you probably already subscribe to her Substack. You know her well as a public figure as well, I'm sure. I'm going to introduce her anyway, though. Professor Liu first came to my attention when I began to see people on Twitter in 2021 talking about a book called Virtue Hoarders, and really a kind of a pamphlet, an old-fashioned broadside kind of pamphlet, which I bought, and I found it to be a revelation. I mean, it was really a thrill for me. It seemed to be opening up the possibility of a kind of a politics beyond the kind of stasis of identity politics, existing liberalism, and so on. So I found that to be very exciting. I know a lot of other people did too, and look, here it is. I want to show you the book in evidence. So, so she's written as a film scholar on melodrama, on Sinophone cinema, many other aspects of film. You'll find her work online and in bookstores. She's got a great seminar series going right now, actually, about gangster capitalism. If you're a subscriber on Substack, which I've been enjoying. And actually, she's got a book coming out next year that I hope she's going to tell us a little bit about today. That's about trauma capitalism. And I wonder if it might kind of fit into the Eddington, an account of Eddington. Let's see. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, she's become also, I mean, I think beyond film scholarship and everything, she's become one of the most visible, influential figures in what some people are calling post-liberal thought. Maybe you have a better name for that, Catherine. I don't know.
Oh man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to talk today about Ari Aster's Eddington, which is a movie that I've seen it. Actually, I've seen it called A Wild Variety of Things, a tedious COVID western, lethally self-satisfied COVID satire. I noticed that Jacobin called it a tragic masterpiece of the 2020s, and I think I am a little bit more in the masterpiece camp. But we're going to see how our opinions compare. And I think, though, any conversation about this small town COVID drama is necessarily going to bump up against, the storylines that it has about BLM, about conspiracy thinking, about toxic social media, political violence. It's bound to produce a wider discussion. So I'm hoping that we get that today. Anyway, please drop your questions into the chat. I must admit, I don't know how I will see those questions, so we'll see how this goes. This is a first.
We don't know how to do this.
This is a first for both of us.
Yeah. There is a little bar that says you can write a message. So try that. Someone test that and see if it happens.
Yeah.
I'll do a test and see if you can see it. Test.
Yeah, you ask yourself a question. Go on.
Yeah, I'll ask myself a question.
Yes. Well, there it is. I see that. Well, that's good.
Okay. All right. So we can do
that's
that.
how that works. Listen. Okay. So things have changed. I mean, when I invited, well, not when I invited you, but when I thought of inviting you for this, Charlie Kirk was still alive. And there's just saying that is kind of chilling to me, and I know it's been chilling to you. I've read you on this topic as well. And, you live in America, you're an academic in a public university. You've written about your experience of this kind of spiraling political, social situation in the US. And as an outsider, a man sitting here in the outer North London suburbs, I want to know, we live sort of downstream of the story. We get this story. I mean, it's flooding our airwaves and everything else. We get this story, but I want to ask kind of, I don't know if it's a general question. How's it going?
I'm daily, my views on this have changed, but my immediate reaction when he was assassinated was one of horror, not jubilation. I know a lot of people were celebrating this, and someone I really is very dear to me said, that's one less bigot in the world. But you know what? Like, there are crazy corners of the internet who think I'm bigoted because I speak out against identity politics from a left point of view. And I felt like the target was on me as well. And that in 2021, when people came out and said, oh, Virtue Hoarders is such a reactionary book. She doesn't know Marx. On social media, I kind of thought, okay, there's 16-year-olds. They just read Marx for the first time. They are angry because I'm in the academic profession. I dare to criticize the academic profession. Like, these people, sorry, they're just like very ignorant, because the leftist tradition of criticizing their own class goes way back to people they would love, like Mao. Like, it started there. The Ehrenreich started were very influenced by Maoist self-criticism of the cadre class within the Communist Party. So, like, you dumbasses who came out in 2021 were like, she doesn't know about Marx, she's an idiot. This is the way. And you deserve to shut up and die. I thought, okay, there's a lot of resentment and ignorance out there. It's shocking, but these people are not going to act out. They're just experimenting with identities and polemics, and Twitter gives you a sense of, that was still called a sense of intimacy with people you might, you want to be in dialogue with. You don't feel like you're in dialogue with. There's this sense of immediacy where you can my DMs were open. They still are when I go back on there, and they can just send me bullshit and tell me to die, whatever. But now I'm like, oh, those 16-year-olds have grown up. Antisocial. COVID has made them more isolated. They have been indoctrinated even more deeply in the fact that words are violence and silence is violence, and violence is a generalized term that has become not meaningless to them. And I had a taste of 2021 again when, for some reason, I went on X, because we're all fucking addicted and it's horrific. Although, I think it's just my need for the adrenaline rush. I went on there and I said, I'm really shocked by this act of political violence. I really respect Ben Burgess's and Megan Day's take on this, which is that the left has better ideas. We should be debating them. He should not have been assassinated. We need to win the masses. Killing off a far right guy does not make things easier for the left. And the amount of hatred then came up again. And then I was appalled to find out that a lot of people around me were think this way too. Like, how can you defend him? This is, he should be dead. And I was like, I wrote about the purgative, Christian eschatological righteous violence in Virtue Hoarders. I wrote about it with regard to, To Kill a Mockingbird, how the right person who kills is cleaning the world of an evil. And that this is a really important part of the American mindset, the Cold War mindset. And that person is a communist or a terrorist or a far right provocateur. It kind of doesn't matter. And I kind of was pushed to the limit, thinking, why is this so bad from my point of view? And part of it is that I don't think this kind of assassination is revolutionary violence. And I don't think you can win the masses with this kind of revolutionary violence. And that's always my horizon, right? And that's always the scope of what I'm thinking about. And that if we live within a liberal society that's supposed to have, enshrine the First Amendment values, the Second Amendment as well. If you want to love all the amendments, love them all. Freedom of speech is actually something that I enjoy in America more than I would. My parents came to enjoy in America, and yet, and I am very critical of the restrictions on it within academia, within the professional sphere, and I'm critical of the restrictions of it when it comes to political violence. Like, his ideas are so bad, his ideas are so reactionary, but every one of the provocations touches a soft spot in liberal hegemony. He is able to poke at the soft spots and provoke in the soft spots. And he has wealthy backers. There are obviously right-wing people who would back him up. You know, why they could have backed me up. I mean, then I could have had 8 million followers wherever too. But they choose to put their money behind Charlie Kirk because the right wingers want to criticize liberalism from the left, and we have fewer people who have deep pockets who want to criticize liberalism from the left. I mean, they want to criticize liberalism from the right. Sorry. Although I have some sponsors now in support because people realize that the liberal hegemony is bankrupt. You know, it's hollowed out. And yet the idea that you kill someone because they express racist thoughts and express racist ideas, instead of arguing with them, marginalizing them, or you know, really just shoving them to the side when you have a mass group of people who understand that none of these right-wing promises has a good horizon for the working class, which are the majority of Americans, then, you know, I want to see that happen. But I feel like we're now in some kind of horrific, like post-apocalyptic, like Bruegel painting. Where not, and this is where, you know, Tara Heffernan's and Felix McNamara's writing on Eddington might fit in. It's like it's not even narrative. It's not even there's not a lot of closure. Of course, it's supposed to be open ended, but it's not very tight as a movie because he has to bring in the well funded Antifa at the end as some kind of Deus ex machina. But it's just like tableaus, just like episodic tableaus of like atrocity, stupidity. I think it's really sad that young people read him as taking intergenerational trauma and trauma seriously. I mean, that he's making fun of that stuff because that is the internet. That is the internet. I read one interview with the actor who played Vernon, the guru who survived the whatever the child abuse cult, and he said Ari Aster told him that he was supposed to just act out the internet. And there's a part of Traumatized, the book that's coming out, which is all about satanic abuse and child cults, right? And this came up in the 80s before there was the internet. And there were these inflammatory stories about the McMartin nursery in LA, lower LA, south part of LA, that was supposed to have like dungeons and basements where children were being abused by in like the most grisly ways, animal decapitation, sexual abuse, because these very hyper vigilant, badly trained psychologists had taken the word of a mother who was schizophrenic and psychotic that her son was being abused by the McMartin Nursery School people. This is something that actually Ari Aster is making fun of, people. Like, what the fuck?
So,
Sorry, I'm sorry, but if people read that straight, I'm just like, you be tripping, because this is just displaying like a smorgasbord of like of horrible phenomena, and with no narrative closure, because the smorgasbord is just about inflaming our own horror at watching in the spectacle. But okay, that's it.
Well, see, I read it. I saw. I obviously saw the same film, but I read it more as a kind of a. I mean, I was thinking about this small town setting and the archetypes from American cinema that we are very familiar with, and I read it as a kind of an anti-Capra. You know, as a kind of a, you know, where Capra was all about the kind of ideal setting. You know, the you know, I mean, I was writing about his It Happened One Night, where there's this Greyhound bus journey up the East Coast, and there's this of incredibly moving unity that you see there. And I was thinking, well, look, it's a small town drama, but he's taken this, he's inverted it in
Yeah,
some
yeah.
way.
Yeah, I mean, this notion. So you have a Capra in the 30s, but it's not just Capra. It's like the 30s were a time when the US had a really powerful left, when the economy was completely in the tank, when there was raw physical suffering in the United States. Um, I think there's statistics because I teach It Happened One Night, and I teach early Western too, Stagecoach. There, the villains are very clear. In the villain is the upstart, publicity hungry, inappropriate husband for Claudette Colbert. Those of you who don't know this, it's just Claudette Colbert is running away from her father to marry a kind of parvenu adventurist pilot who's a little bit effete, but is obviously marrying her for the money. And she runs away to try to get to him. And Clark Gable plays this kind of like regular Joe reporter who meets her by accident on the bus. And she's a little princess who's never ridden a public bus before. And he's he's a tough talking guy who's trying to like teach her how it is. But there's this moment when they all start singing a vaudeville song called The Man in the Trapeze. The entire bus starts singing, and the people are acting it out. And there's this beautiful sense of like harmony, literal harmony, right? That there's that moment in like sort of social cohesion, harmony that's based on a kind of working class sensibility. And the rich girl has to fall into this world, and she finds like the beauty and authenticity of like the average, literally the average Joe. A similar moment happens in Stagecoach, John Ford, that gets remade by Quentin Tarantino. It's just like a piece of filth where everyone kills each other. But in the actual Stagecoach that he's remade in Hateful Eight, Tarantino's Hateful Eight, the actual Stagecoach is a group of people in a small town who get together and like um capture the banker who's stealing all the money from one of the banks that's going under. And the country is allegorized by the various people on the stagecoach who begin to figure out that one of them is a banker absconding with money, right? And John Wayne is playing this like young Western guy is going to go avenge his father's death. And then Claire Trevor plays a fallen woman. And the things that the people get together to do in the stagecoach is like capture the banker and allow John Wayne and the fallen woman to ride away off into the sunset, literally to Mexico, so they can escape Wayne's, criminal, about to happen criminal indictment. So there's a sense of moral cohesion. There's a sense of unity of purpose and class enemy. The banker is the class enemy. So if you think that we are making progress in America in terms of our movie industry, think again. Because I really feel like even if you're a reactionary kind of guy in the 30s, just what was happening in the country and the need for solidarity among the working class and this idea of the class enemy and the entertainments that people were trying to engage in, like they just have a more leftist and solidaristic message. So what Ari Aster is also not new to documenting American decline and degeneration. We were just talking before this live went on about Nashville, which I just watched recently because it's a film that fucking haunts me. And maybe I'm old, but it is so superior to Eddington in terms of dealing with small town America, American politics, and political violence. Even though, Aster is probably just like he is a filmmaker of the meme, so maybe that's just me being old, like Solid Gold, Magikarp. My son was really into Pokemon. I'm like, he was obsessed with Pokemon. He's like, that's a Pokemon, right? And I was like, oh my God, um yeah, I'm a
You're
snob.
allowed to
I'm a
figure that
snob.
out.
I'm a snob. I'm
No,
sorry.
no,
I'm
no, no,
sorry. I'm
no,
a snob about
no.
Pokemon and a solid
And
and
it,
that little Easter egg of Solid Gold Magikarp being the name of the data center. I think it's just another like shout out to Gen Z and millennials. Like, oh yeah, this is the evil data center, but it's actually the Pokemon you really wanted to get the most, right? When you were 12. Ha ha, right? But
okay.
but
I,
what I was going
I
to say
see
about
that.
Nashville is that it's rigorously contextualized, very few close-ups, all medium shots, all context.
Yes,
Sorry.
and the thing that we were talking about beforehand, as you said, was that in fact, apparently Astor asked the cast and crew to watch Nashville in their prep for the movie, so he has some sense of that as being a kind of a model. But you're suggesting that he's stripping away context and not offering context. He's minimizing context or not providing
Um,
it.
so the complexity of like the music industry is really an important part of Nashville, right? Everyone is involved in making music, selling stars. From the um from the bad singer in the strip club to the Dolly Parton esque main character whose name I can't remember, from the Keith Carradine character who's a rock star who's coming to Nashville to record. Everyone is part of cultural production in this kind of reactionary, and there's a political campaign in the background. And so maybe like what I'm responding to there is the fact that people work and are producing things. And in Eddington, it's like people are just making images, creating false flag situations. Like the only person who's making things is like Emma Stone making those creepy dolls. Like there's no one actually, everyone's like shooting guns, programming drones, staging campaigns. Like you're so removed from the sites of production right now, even in small town America, so that all the imagistic stuff is foregrounded. So Nashville's actually the exploration of an industry that's kind of an allegory of the movie industry, right? And it also ends with a single shooter creepy guy comes into this town, rents a room, and assassinates someone during a political rally for a candidate we never see, who's like Nixon-esque, whose campaign manager is like a city slicker who comes in Nashville to try to manipulate all these things for his publicity. But the one thing that Altman did formally, and this is, I just watched this, and I have to say, I will bet you $100 that what I'm saying is true, is that when someone starts to sing a song, he lets them finish it in real time. Now, you guys may not think that that's so radical, but in our fragmented world where every single soundtrack is just a snippet, it's just like 30 seconds of this, 40 seconds of this, cut to this, it was actually just the most amazing thing to watch. Like when music came on, we were going to hear the entire thing. It's cut, because there are multiple cameras. It's beautifully recorded. It's obviously not realistic because there's so many different auditory situations. But that is just like an amazing feat. And I don't think we could get away with it again because we have no attention span. And this is what Ari Aster is talking about too. Like we're totally afflicted, fragmented people with zero attention spans. And I think the BLM people who some people are reading as like young people on their political awakening. No, they're having like an intense emotional reaction with no end. It's very nihilistic. And I guess Nashville is actually also quite nihilistic, except that I think that the filmmaking itself, or like, and the depth of the complexity of the ensemble cast makes it like redeeming. And maybe Joaquin Phoenix's like actual performance is what redeems Eddington. But anyway, you have this kind of farcical ending in Nashville, of an act of political violence, the destruction of, what was already a silly spectacle for a horrible, invisible candidate, and a meaningless act of violence, a meaningless, non-motivated act of violence, again, on the part of like a single shooter guy. And in Eddington, I guess the political assassination has more motivation, but it's also farcical in its execution, farcical in its consequences. And I was saying to Steve Bowbrick that I don't really love the fact that, you have the super soldier Antifa coming up at the end as some kind of Deus Ex Machina. I think it's cheap. I think it's a cheap thing.
Yeah, but isn't that also a kind of a? I mean, I read that as a kind of almost Swiftian kind of satirical twist. That it was these black clad kind of Antifa who came in as almost to resolve the story
Right,
in an
right,
odd
right,
way.
right.
But which was kind of comic, isn't it? But
It is
maybe
comic, but it also made me feel like it's because Astor didn't trust himself to end the story without them. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, did if we cut them out, it would be more
yeah.
farcical. Do
No,
you
I
know what
get
I mean? And you said earlier that you thought he was sympathetic to conspiracy theories, which is which in a way is the baseline fantasy of the conspiracy theorist, and we're going to do a conference on this in October at Irvine, is you have a fantasy of an all-powerful cadre of people who are controlling the world. And to me, that is the Antifa thing. Like, that's the heart of the conspiracy theories. You have to think daddy is super powerful. Like, if you talk to a conspiracy theorist, they'll say, it's the secret world government or it's the Mossad. And I always ask them, like, so do you think, like, Mossad are that competent? Like, they're really that, you know, capable? Like, they manipulate everyone who comes in their path? Like, you have to have this, antagonist who's so powerful that all you can do, and it's an erotic thing almost, is expose their power, but you can't do anything more than that.
yeah,
Very
yeah.
masochistic, very Oedipal, very enjoyable.
But there's a. I mean, do you find in the BLM aspect of the story? I mean, the thing I found about that was that those young people were pictured as being kind of lovable, but also ridiculous. They were a sort of a, you want to kind of give them a hug because they're just kids. They're not. I mean, maybe I'm being old now, but they were also a ridiculous thing. But they weren't wicked or radicalized in the way that Stephen Miller thinks that they are. They were.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I read their portrayal as being like it was very accurate because there was that kind of fever pitch. So in that sense, there was a kind of documentary aspect to it, of realism, especially of like these young white women who became so inflamed by the issue, and but knowing what happened, Black Lives Matter, that it became this money raising thing that ended up, I don't know if you know the scandal, but the BLM group actually raised, millions and millions of dollars. They bought an influencer house in LA. Like knowing that end, which I'm sure us Esther knows, and knowing how little like real progress African American like economic well being has seen since that time, and knowing how Minneapolis itself, where George Floyd was killed, is still extremely starkly divided economically, socially, in every other way. Um, I I saw them less farcical and innocent and more like darkly satirical of these like nihilistic energies released by the internet with no institutional frame to go along with it, and then this kind of like insane fanaticism that comes out of this kind of internet meme activism.
And do you think that relates to the kind of conspiracy theory side of it? I know I was interested to note that the conspiracy theories that we saw on kind of display, they were kind of relatively benign. They weren't aliens or abductions or race theory or the Great Replacement or whatever. They were kind of corporate. There were fear of the corporation, anxiety about corporations, and so on, weren't they? But
You
that,
mean like they were more like left-wing conspiracy theories,
yeah, I
would you
guess they
say?
were. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you mean in Eddington? Well, they were, but the whole anti-mask, anti-vax thing became, Robert F. Kennedy's thing. I mean, you can just see that there's like a massive collapse of trust in America, in institutions, in politics, in each other, in the very notion of progress itself. Everything is just theater. Everything is spectacle. They're always like black black clad, troops coming in to clean things up or fuck things up. Um, and I have to say, like, Astor kind of like delights in promoting that kind of spectacle, which was which, you know, I would say is like, not, it's even beyond like television or cinematic. It's in a way, it doesn't, it's incoherent. There's still like, there are arcs for every character in Nashville. There are like 30 of them, right? And there's heartbreak, there's illusion, there's disillusion. There you can see a marriage breaking up, you can see great tenderness lost. Here, I just feel like everything gets blown up. There's no resolution really. And then the conspiracy theorist mom wins. I mean, that's also quite farcical. I don't know that Astor is really conspiratorial as much as he is an observer of conspiratorial thinking and conspiracy culture. Um, what I thought it was going to be was a much more agonistic struggle between Joaquin Phoenix and Pedro Pascal, like the liberal and then the kind of apolitical conservative turned far right, turned driven mad in some way. And it actually what that was just a side story. Like Pedro Pascal's character gets killed off pretty much like at the end of the first act, which I was kind of shocked by. And it becomes more like the farcical inner journey of Joaquin Phoenix. Um, okay, so I feel like I've said a lot, and maybe we could take some questions. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, now I'm not seeing a lot of questions, a lot of interesting comments. I mean, Cinema Timshell is just saying that the depiction of those Antifa soldiers is definitely conspiratorial, whether Astor intended it or not, and also Timshell says that wants to remind us that the solid gold Magikarp thing is also a kind of a poisoned prompt that you're supposed to be able to give to an AI.
Well, I tried it this morning, and AI has learned that it is an AI glitch.
Yeah. Okay.
So
So it
it's
told
been
you
taught
that.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Solid gold Magikarp was supposedly able to, if you typed it into ChatGPT, was able to produce like LLM hallucinations. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I got hooked on the Pokemon. I knew about the AI thing before I knew about the Pokemon, but I didn't realize that it had this like AI aspect to it as well. And so there almost is this, and this I do appreciate about Esther, is that there's been a lot of like canned anti-capitalism in Hollywood recently. I mean, there was that ridiculous WS Wall Street Journal article about how People's Republic of Hollywood is making capitalism look bad, but there's a lot of like knee-jerk, like rich people bad kind of narratives now, and chasing like Parasite star. So I feel like Ari Aster is actually making fun of that, like, oh, it's an evil corporation. They've finally taken over. They're the data center, and they're called Solid Gold Magic Carp. And we know that no Silicon Valley person would ever call a company that because they like to take vowels out of words. They think that's cool.
They
I
don't
don't know
like
why,
that.
but
That's right.
that's what they do.
Yeah, it's still the case, isn't it? Now, here's an interesting one. Cara Vogel is asking, can you, now I don't understand this, so you're going to have to help me here. Can you speak about Fisher's concept of interpassivity in relation to the fact that A24 took their first private equity deal this past year?
So
Explain that to us.
I don't know Fisher's paradox, but I've been working on private equity, right? Now, I started this summer with a whole bunch of books. Well, let's say 4 or 5. Like that's not a whole bunch, but many. And I started reading through them, and then I felt very, very discontent with what was being done, what was was, well, first I felt so sad and devastated. Like, your grandmother dies in manor care. It was taken over by Apollo Management. You try to sue them because they've, degraded the care in your grandmother's nursing home. I'm caricaturizing this, but not really. You sue them. You run out of money. They have an $800 million law firm on retainer. Your grandmother doesn't come back, or else they settle for 1.2 million. Your grandmother still doesn't come back. Manor care still run poorly, and they've sold it to yet another private equity firm. And like, the exposure of these things produces outrage and horror. Like, each one of these books on private equity is actually like a horror film, right? But but they're packaged, and then you look at who's publishing them, and it's Hachette. Hachette is one of the biggest conglomerates. Penguin Random House is taken over by Bertelsmann. It's like they've realized, like, exposés sell too, and A24 and the incursion of private equity into it is just another one of these stories, because you have like a mom and pop shop. This is Toys R Us was one of the great examples that was destroyed by private equity. Totally legit business, great business. One person started it, many branches. Private equity comes in and they allow the executives and the owners to cash out big time. And they manage to extract all this profit from it by selling the property under Toys R Us, leasing the properties back to Toys R Us, and not investing in a legitimate e-commerce plan that would have allowed Toys R Us to compete with Amazon. But they extracted all of their profits from the selling of the real estate and from the fees that, the $1 billion takeover entailed. And so you have like any legitimate successful business right now in America is liable to take over. And the owners of that business, by private equity, the owners of that business have every motivation to sell, or to allow private equity to come in and allegedly, like, infuse your business with cash, allow it to grow. So this logic is just part of this um, pillaging and plundering of legitimate, healthy aspects of healthy businesses on the part of B&E. So A24 has um, has had this takeover. But but the logic of private equity and its production might have been embedded already in it, because they really have, their branding is very algorithmically correct. They are able to get right to that prestige horror um, bracket, that higher income, urban, young people who may not be able to buy a home, have a good college education, and will consume their products like religiously, and think of themselves as being, it's elevated horror. Elevated horror is a great niche market, and they will, and PD saw it and were like, they've done this really well. We're going to take it over. Um, the other thing that's really insane is that private equity has created these new financial bonds. I don't know if you've heard about them. They're called Bowie bonds. You can speculate on an artist's book, the entire IP of an artist. And the reason why they're called Bowie bonds is because Bowie, great artist, visionary that he was, sold his entire book to an investment firm when he knew he was dying of liver cancer, so that his wife, and I mean, it's not that he was lacking in money, but the chunk of change was huge. It was $700 million. So, but every time you listen to a Bowie song now, the residuals are paid to that financial firm. And this is one reason also why, I don't know about the UK, but in the United States, we are afflicted by constant piped in music everywhere, played at a very soft volume. Every time they play Neil Young's book, every time they play David Bowie's book, but at a very soft volume, the private equity finance bros are getting pennies on that dollar, because Neil Young did that too with his book.
Yes. And I hadn't realized that private equity had reached the cinema business yet, because I mean, we know that at the top end, I guess, at the studio end, it's the tech firms who are coming in and buying up I mean, Oracle are involved now, aren't they? And so we're seeing that. And in Britain, I mean, it's the same firms. It's the American private equity firms who are coming in and buying the entire elder care industry, whole swathes of UK, business, and also the public sector are now being bought up by these people. So
And the test cases were when the Americans bought Liverpool and Manchester United, loaded them down with debt, but like amplified their global reach so that you have Manchester United fans in Hong Kong and Indonesia. And Manchester United used to be the team of a northern England industrial town.
yeah, yeah, no, and that's a big story here in Britain too, isn't it? I mean, I feel like I ought to get back to Ari Aster though to some degree and I also feel like his advocate now. I feel like I've been put in that position, and so I want to say, I mean, because he seems like an interesting. He seems in this conspiracy business. He seems to have an interesting perspective, but I guess he's being careful about what he discloses because he doesn't want to be pinned on either side of the argument, does he? Well, because I guess there are risks to that now that we're aware of. I mean, he said something in one of his. So he was talking about how he said, oh, he was talking about social media and the whole business about social media is a tool and it's been harnessed in a lot of ways. We've been distracted by these ideological battles while big power operates above us and is changing us and changing the world. Isn't he saying the same thing as you about these uh, uh, these big forces?
But he won't say capitalism. He says
Oh,
big
big power.
power.
Yeah.
I, I think that's a key difference. Like big power sounds like a Pokemon. It
Yeah.
sounds like it could be slightly benign, big floaty person coming and like puppeteering us.
Yeah.
Um Capitalism also, people who hate leftism will say, oh my God, that's, criticizing capitalism is also conspiracist thinking. But and I tend not to say that so much, but there is a conspiracy that controls us, and it's the state and the corporations. They work together hand in glove right now. And do you want to call that big power? Or do you want to call that gangster capitalism? I mean, what you call racketeering. It's like the cartelization of the economy makes you feel like you're helpless, powerless. And I think Eddington is, in a sense, a struggle, dramatizes the struggle of American powerlessness at this particular moment in time. But it is very, I don't want to be flippant and say, oh, the real conspiracy is capitalism. That's like too pat in a way, although I think there is some truth in it. Like, I try to break it down when I talk to people and think about like the wage labor relationship. You sell your labor to be paid so you can live. And the ideology of capitalism is you and your boss are equals. You just like are at a level playing field. You have the same information. You have the same amount of autonomy. And if you don't like this job, then you can go to another job and sell your labor there. That is a kind of, self-possession, um, high liberal feeling like I own myself, I own my labor, the markets are free. Adam Smith, John Locke, everyone works well, hand in glove. If I work harder in the Max Weberian style, I get more. And am I frugal like Benjamin Franklin, then I can have savings that become capital, and I work my way up the capital chain. Now, this myth, if you like, this ideology, if you like, is so powerful and yet completely bankrupt. And I think that is also an important part of like the post-liberal vision of Ari Aster, if you like.
Okay.
Um
No,
yeah,
I'm going to chuck in. Kenneth has just contributed this one, which I think is relevant here. He's talking about the myth idea. Is that the final super soldier attack is a myth in itself? I'm just paraphrasing it. Just like the country is founded on myths. So I guess that what Kenneth is saying is that Asta is giving us another mythic kind of powerful
mhm.
mythic force there. that that's an interesting angle. Um,
The super soldier, we talked about how it's kind of comedic. I was like unhappy about it because it was the Deus Ex Machina, but um, they're they're also like flying in private jets, not military jets. So there's this whole thing about them being a private army, and they look cool. They're very cinematic. We've all been, you know, inured to that image because of Marvel and because of action films and things like that. So it's like he kind of changes genre. It's like Western farce tragedy, and then suddenly it's like, are we in an action film now? Like the westerns that I love are about like the futility of violence, the inevitability and futility and tragic use of violence. So Stagecoach is actually it is a classic western, but it's actually um a comedy in some ways. There's a happy ending. The country comes together. All the bad person is taken out. The couple is able to escape. But if you look at Shane, if you look at John Ford's later westerns, The Searchers, it's like the violence is
mm,
so inevitable and heavy, and it is so damaging. It damages everyone. Like John Wayne in The Searchers is this virulent, anti-Indian, anti-Native American person. Everyone is caught in his obsession, and he's trying to rescue his niece Natalie Wood, who's been kidnapped by a native tribe, but his his hatred of them consumes the nation. It's a very Vietnam era thing. It's like if you hate the other so much and you are willing to use unchecked violence, like you destroy the community around you. And then in Shane, which is a much more optimistic Western, which is actually more about a real event in Wyoming, I believe it was, where there's a group of bandits who are coming down to the ranchers' homes and just plundering and pillaging. Like, and there's a marksman gunman who comes out of nowhere, is able to, organize the people and, defeat the banditry. He leaves. The tragedy of that is like when you have someone who's that violent, who is that effective at exercising violence, he can't actually be part of the community. Like, he too has to be excluded in the end, which means, like, he's part of that whole, like, bandit, gangster, bad guy thing. And the cost of this in the community is that they know that they've been saved by this act of savagery from banditry, but the community has to close around itself. And the little kid who loves Shane as as the hero is left with his farmer father who has been totally unmanned because he can't fight them. All he knows how to do is farm. And, you have this like crisis in masculinity. The wife loves Shane. It's like the whole family is in love with him and the father's completely emasculated by it. But this is like also just like horrific at the end. The devastation and the knowledge that people have that this is the hole that needs to be filled. This like
mm,
these acts of brutality, right? So I'm like expecting Western, right? I'm expecting that kind of, because I'm old, right? Maybe I want that kind of catharsis. I want that kind of like feeling together. I don't want this like snickering, like, oh yeah, that's a Pokemon and that's from Mission Impossible. There's a kind of insider. This is why it's like totally and perfectly memeified. And um, I don't know if it's possible to make
yeah,
that kind of tragic film in America anymore because we're surrounded by tragedy and political violence. And, in the end, in cinema, we look to it for escape. So,
yeah. I mean, you're kind of convincing me in a way. It just occurs to me that maybe it's what it is less satire and it's more kind of euphemism. That there's a sense of y- he doesn't want to actually say the 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 radical things that would get him into trouble. So he's giving us these kind of watered down, kind of slightly comedic versions of those things. I don't know if that's a
but
real.
It's part of like meme culture too. Like you can't be sincere or too committed to
Mm.
anything. You always have to keep yourself away. Like, I raised a son in these conditions and I would get mad about something and he'd go, "You mad, bro?" Like, "Oh, why do you care so much?" And that would just like make me more angry because um to commit, to engage, to take a position is already like being a cuck.
Yeah, yeah, and
So
actually,
you just
now
throw
that
all the cards on the table and you play around with them and you make the most grotesque things so that, Joaquin Phoenix is in a body sling and, you have this couple making love to him right next to him. And it's like, it's Oedipal, it's horrible, it's humiliating, it's disgusting. It's just everything on the table all at once.
you're making me also think about another John Ford film that I just watched, Fort Apache, which
Mhm.
is it's kind of different from those other westerns, I guess, but it has this kind of kind of core of honor and nobility and kind of rules and compliance and this sense of everybody in that little community, which is kind of like a small town, I suppose, and their compliance with the rules and with the
Mm.
for the collective good. I mean, it's but we don't see that here. I mean, I thought that the small town was meant to be the most resilient aspect of the American polity. It's the it's the
It's
kind
been
of prototype.
destroyed. No, the small
Yeah.
towns have been destroyed by private equity, by real estate speculation, by brain drains. And so I too thought like, oh, I heard that Ari Aster actually grew up in a small town in New Mexico. So this has all this like kind of resonance for him. It's semi-autobiographical. Um, I,
Yeah.
you know, it's a really fucked up time in America, and I love Joaquin Phoenix. I think he's the finest actor of his generation. But there was something. Somebody in a review wrote this about him, like he plays a low IQ everyman. I thought that was just like so condescending, but I guess that's true. I guess like low IQ everyman. I mean, I know that's not Ari Aster, so he has to promote this image, um, from the coasts of a low IQ everyman, driven by the worst impulses of
Yeah.
American culture. And, the Ford the Ford and the Capra films of the golden era, really elevate the everyman. It's like the highest value, right? The
Yeah.
the the person of great, honor. And of course, under, our greater, understanding of race and sex, we think, "Oh, yeah, we have to take him down because he's a white, cis heteropatriarch." But who replaces him?
Yeah, I get you. I mean, actually, I'm going to put in another one from Kenneth here. He says that uh, he's got a theory here, but everything after the desert attack with the drone bombs is actually a lie, and it's spun by the mother later. So there's a kind of there's a narrative trick there where she's the truth is her son-in-law killed the reserve cop and took part in the scarring of his deputy. So there's a narrative angle there, which is kind of interesting.
Mhm, mhm. That's kind of the add-on alternative ending, the film within the fiction within the fiction, like the absolute unreliability of all narration, which is what it's about, right? No story is reliable. No series of images is reliable. No narrative of progress is reliable. And I suppose because it has that sense of chaos, that it really is, the film of our times.
Yeah,
The CDC is not reliable. The liberal mayor is not reliable. The crazy, and then you have this like the fusion of the cop and the mayor as a vegetable. I mean, that is kind of like fascism, when you have like the military and the state fused together, but with this like nefarious matriarch conspirator who's online all the time, as the protagonist. I mean, I do think that that is a story that no one tells, is like middle-aged women's consumption of the internet. I'm like, I'm of that demographic. I just happen to be like a professor, but like your mom's consumption of the internet, like the 40 somethings mother's consumption of the internet, the 20 somethings mother's consumption of the internet. It's like you are living with someone of another generation who's also connected to all this misinformation from left and right, and who has a whole other like world of expertise, authorities, insane sources of news to parse from. And in some ways, like I can see how this film is about that experience for Ari Aster. I don't know what his mom is like, but this kind of my mother passed away last year, but she would like tell me the craziest things that she would get from WeChat, and I just wouldn't even know what to say. Like in the middle of COVID, she has high cholesterol. I have high well, high, not that bad, but she has legit high cholesterol, and she's like, Kathy, you should be eating an egg a day, a boiled egg a day, and I'm like, what? She goes, this is on WeChat now. That is what will boost your immunity against COVID. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, and you can't argue with her because she's not going to quote the source. She believes her source more than me. So I would just be like, "Oh, okay." Like, and you just but how long do you keep saying "oh, okay" to this when if they're coming at you like, this was a virus planted by the aliens to take over Earth? Like, am I just going to be like, "Okay, mom, okay"? Like, you we've lost the ability to communicate and persuade each other because each one of us is connected to a bunch of pseudo authorities on the internet, and they all have medical information and political information and historical information, like fake historical information, and they take over. Like, I think if there's anything, like, it's like hereditary in some ways. I mean, it's like the all-powerful, matriarch connected to the worst parts of the internet is what takes over at the end. So in that sense, like, m it is a great autobiographical film then.
Yeah, I mean, again, I wanna feed in the fact that he did say. I mean, he's talked a little bit. It just feels a little bit like capitalist realism, doesn't it? He's Astor himself says that this system, this social media system, and everything is built on feedback, and that's designed to keep us in place and to keep us feeling free. So he seems to be reflecting on the same pressures that you're talking about there.
No, no, he is. I'm not. Okay, I don't know why I'm so impatient with it. Because I feel like it could be so much more. I had such high
Yeah,
expectations. I guess because it was billed as Western thriller, and the Western for however flawed it is something like I'm really like interested in. I just saw The Magnificent Seven and The Seven Samurai too recently, and I'm really interested in like how these narratives adjudicate ethics and insider, outsider, criminality, violence, and then um I don't know, I feel like I was served up a big smorgasbord and told,
yeah.
"Here it is."
So those older movies, they do it in a more clear cut way. They're unafraid to make a kind of a statement about good, bad, inside, outside, and so on. Whereas Astor's just prevaricating. He's giving us
I
his
don't know, like, and doing it really well in some way. Like, but I think Midsummer was a better film because he took a position like, "You stupid anthropology PhDs, you will be consumed by the faux culture you think you're studying." I think that was to me, that's a good position. Such a good, that's a compelling and chilling message for all you people getting PhDs out there. Just think
okay.
twice right now. Think twice. Think twice.
No,
I'm going to have to
yeah.
go soon, but
No, I
can
was
we take one last question and
well, we
then
can, and actually, we've got a little. Uh, this is the only film now. Jeremy Cherson is saying there's been a lot of criticism talking about how this film is valuable in regards to being the only film that properly deals with the pandemic, and that for some reason other artists have stayed away from it. Why not more art and film directly about the pandemic? I guess what he's saying.
I have to make a confession. I wrote a I wrote a screenplay about the pandemic, and so I was really interested in. I'm not going to tell you guys what it is, but it's a genre film, and it is a big question. I feel like we cannot even begin to deal with what that was, and I really admire Esther for trying to tackle it. And I think some of the most compelling scenes of the film are those fights within supermarkets and on the
Yeah.
line with over the masking thing. I mean, I think that the mask became this like the virtue signaling of an entire of liberalism. The idea that you there's still some kids who wear N95s now and are condemning people for not masking in public, but this kind of it was The Great Divide, and I thought this film was really gonna be about that, and I it was only about that for a little period of time, so that certain people used it to show their belief in science, their superiority to others, and then the right used the lack of mass to show, like, their freedom, their autonomy, and, you just can't decide, like, what the fuck is going on anymore, because the CDC is telling you one thing one day, the Center for Disease Control, and then told you another thing the next day. So you wonder why we have Robert F. Kennedy, who's a um, vaccine anti-vaxxer in charge now. Instead of saying we don't know, here are some recommendations. They're like, no mask. In the beginning, they told us no, mask won't prevent it. You just need to be socially distanced. And we stood online to go into supermarkets. And then, like 6 weeks later, it was like everyone needs to wear a mask. How do you create public trust in institutions when you can't actually say, we don't know? Or there's a shortage of masks. We want to keep them for the hospital workers. Don't go out. We don't know. We literally do not know. Why were those directives so falsely confident in themselves? It just bred more conspiratorial thinking. The liberal institutions have collapsed. Like when you see someone with a lawn sign, I don't know that you do in the UK, but we in this house, we believe in science. It's like, how did scientific method, which was supposed to be questioning belief, ever questioning oneself, which is what like my brand of leftism and Marxism is about, become a question of belief and superiority over other people? You know, is believing in science at this point better than believing in conspiracy theories? Science is against reification. And they use reification in a very different way from leftists do, but it's still about like solidifying something and reducing something to simple truths rather than seeing like what we know of the world as a series of propositions that can be tested, disproven, moved on from dialectically. Let's
I'm
say.
going to say we circled around to COVID and to the dialectic, and we've done an hour of this. I think that is fantastic. And I know that you need to get going now. I wanted just to finish up by saying thank you to you, Professor Liu. That was really marvelous. And it went in directions I wasn't expecting, and that's really a thrill. This talk will be up on the Gross Substack in the next day or two. And I'm also going to email everybody who's a subscriber, not the paying subscribers, everybody. I'm going to email everybody a bunch of links to the professor's books and other stuff that is relevant, and also some kind of further reading and so on that I think is relevant to this. I also want to encourage everybody here, because I think I've got an audience of like-minded folks, to subscribe to Gross. Please press the subscribe button, even if you only go for the free option in the meantime. Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll still get some
Please
content
do.
from me.
I did not know you were recording this. I'm glad I held back on some stuff.
Yeah.
Because when I
Well,
do when I do the Zoom stuff, we don't record and I don't
okay.
hold back. So I want to encourage those of you who want to hear less censored versions of me to subscribe to my Substack to QAnon. But I do think I felt guilty for charging people, but I do feel like in this particular political climate, I feel vulnerable, and I don't want like you know the Yahoo to come and just like take me out of context. I'm sure they will, no matter what I do. But I think that freedom of speech can be guaranteed in certain spaces. And we've lost all sense of boundaries and bounded spaces. And engagement is often the price of being in these spaces, and not just like um, anybody anywhere could say anything all at once, where we have this illusion in social media that we have immediacy, that we can just like attack and dismiss and cancel whomever we like, whose ideas disturb our sense of who we are. And this is this kind of like horrible, um insane personalization of technology that has also happened with social media. I like to have a little more distance, but also a little more commitment from people who are following the Substack, especially Gangster Capitalism. Next year's theme will be zombie liberalism. I can't wait to get to that one. But Steve, this was great experiment, and I really appreciate you making me do this so we can do it again sometime soon.
We should do, and I think it's really been fun. I would say that Substack automatically records these things, so we should talk later if you. I mean, it doesn't distribute them, so but we can talk later if you want to about the actual distribution.
That is so interesting. Okay. Yeah, let's talk. I'll put it up too if the other recording. I'll put it up for free on mine then.
Fantastic. I'll share it with you later on.
Okay.
And thank
Sounds
you.
good.
Thank you.
That's good, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody else.
Just call me Catherine. Okay. Bye, Steve. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye-bye.